been about 2 weeks since my last update, because last week there weren't really any changes worth discussing. But this week, a fresh batch of changes were just posted this morning on the UI Discord. In addition, myself, the DBM author, and Funkeh, the Bigwigs author, got to talk with Ion Hazzikostas and Andy Churchill from the UI team about upcoming changes and issues with the current UI and what add-on authors, as well as the stock UI, can do to mitigate a lot of these issues. And it came up with a lot of good stuff that I want to share with you today as well. But first, I'm going to start with the UI changes that were posted in the Discord. Now, some of this you've already seen. Most of this stuff was posted in the Week 4 video as upcoming stuff. Now, here's the first big change that was announced this week. Spellcasts. They are relaxing restrictions on Spellcast API for the player's own spellcasts. They will no longer be secret, even in combat. This includes units controlled by the player, such as pets. What does this mean? It means now unit frames, cast bars, and even cooldowns will be possible again with players' own spells, with a few exceptions. This does not give direct access to player cooldown information. It only gives access to whether or not you just cast a spell. The add-ons will be able to use this computationally to go, hey, you just cast Shield Wall, so now it's on cooldown. And we know the cooldown is X, so we know it'll be back up in Y seconds. But here are where the caveats come in. Because it only knows when you cast a spell, but it can't actually check the literal cooldown, talents like this will break the computation of it. Because again, UnitPower is secret. So it's not going to be able to detect how much rage you spent. Therefore, it's not going to be able to calculate cooldown reduction based on rage spent from a talent like Anger Management. This basically means you're not fully getting the ability to track personal cooldowns back. You're partially getting it in a very hacky sort of way. And it's really unclear what Blizzard intends to do with this. I think this change was mostly done for unit frames and stuff, but the fact that you get kind of cooldown tracking back is kind of an extra they probably couldn't avoid, but they were okay with it because they knew it wasn't perfect. But nonetheless, you're going to see add-ons start using this information for cooldown tracking, at least for spells that have static cooldowns and don't have gimmicks like Anger Management that alter the set cooldowns on the fly. So it's a very interesting change, but it's a big noteworthy one. Coming soon, here's the next big one. Forced interface matching for 12.0. Mainline add-ons that don't have an in-res version of 12.0 or higher will not be allowed to load. No player override. This means that if an add-on doesn't explicitly say it's compatible with 12.0, you cannot load it. You cannot check that box that says load out of date. They are not going to allow it. They are strictly saying up-to-date add-ons and only up-to-date add-ons can be loaded by the player, period. And this is to avoid problems with players trying to load add-ons that don't work with Midnight and wondering why they're broken. They want players to log in on pre-patch to an interface that says, here are the add-ons that work, and only the add-ons that work, so that they don't have to deal with all these tech support tickets about low FPS, error spam, broken UI because a user has a bunch of add-ons installed that no longer work. They're simply nipping it in the bud right here. This is a big one. UnitPower. They are relaxing restrictions, so players' secondary resources are no longer secret. This will include big things like stagger. In Midnight currently, you don't have access to tracking stagger at all. If you play a monk tank and you want to track stagger, forget it. It's not possible. They're fixing that. They're going to relax the restrictions on stagger, soul shards, arcane power, secondary resources that are outside your normal things like mana and rage and energy. You know, the secondary resources that you need to actually play your class correctly. Now, here's something they have that's under consideration, which means it's not locked in stone, but it shows that they're watching the feedback. Custom unit frame pain points. We're looking into ways to improve the ability for add-ons to recreate unit frames from scratch, including, but not limited to, the possibility of adding in a unit health bar template that includes all the various pieces needed by unit frame health bars, absorbs, heal predictions, etc. Basically, they hear you, healers. The unit frame add-ons got giga trashed by the API nerf, and healers are mad, especially. And they're looking at that specifically and recognizing it. In addition, aura filtering. Again, healers, they see you. We are looking at ways to improve aura filtering. So they know you don't want to see everything on the frames. You only want to see X, Y, and Z. Secure aura header template. This is more technical, but they're probably looking for ways to allow the above points while still keeping things locked down in a way. Basically, they're going to make it so you can filter things, but still not know what they are. Like, it's still all going to be secret. And this pretty much concludes the changes that are posted in the Discord. But now, bonus change, talking points that me and Bigwigs author got from talking with Ian and Andy today with combat add-ons specifically, and all the stuff that I've been getting in your comments, I've seen on the forums, I've seen on Discord. We brought up a lot of pain points and had a back and forth and came up with a lot of good stuff. But first, I want to show you the problems. The raid timeline. Built-in timeline shows timers for all abilities, no filtering. Add-ons are bound by the same rule, period. So if you say, for example, you pull a boss, here are your timers. Here's the timeline. Here's what DBM and Bigwigs can do. They show timers for everything. You can't say, you can't turn this timer off and this timer off, but leave the others on. It's all or nothing, period. No filtering. This is what the current Midnight Alpha is. The next issue. Since add-ons don't have information about the spells on the timeline, since they're all secrets, we cannot color bars by spell, no countdowns, no emphasis, no spell renaming, nothing. We can't do anything with it. So again, what you see is what you get. So if it's a really long spell name, that's what you get. And all the bars are the same color. You do get spell icons, but since they're secrets, we can't really quantify what spell is what. This is what you get. Now, raid warnings, the current implementation. Built-in timeline shows warnings for all abilities. I say no filtering possible, but that's technically incorrect. Minimal filtering is possible. I will show you that here. You could basically only filter by priority. You could say, all warnings, show me only medium or high priority or critical priority, or show me only critical priority. And you could also click high or not targeted. But again, this is just arbitrary, and it's based on what Blizzard says you warning priority is. You don't, as the player, don't get to choose the priority of the warning, and you don't get to choose the spells. That's the current implementation. Again, add-ons can't emphasize, no spell renaming, no custom sounds. The sounds you get from warnings are very basic Blizzard alert sounds. Now, currently in Midnight Alpha, add-ons can trigger TTS to read out warnings using Blizzard's built-in TTS, but all it's going to do is read out the text as Blizzard shows it. And as I point here, Blizzard controls all priorities. Players do not have any say whatsoever in priorities other than saying, hey, don't show me minor. But you don't know what ability they consider minor or what ability they consider a priority. Now, what is Blizzard going to do about this? Let's talk about the future. We'll start with the raid timeline. Blizzard is going to add an API that lets add-on authors filter spells from the timeline. Now, what this API is going to do is add-on like Bigwigs is going to say, don't show spell ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And once that request is sent, the timeline is no longer going to show timers for that ability, period. You basically just turned off that ability. So they're addressing the core issue of being able to turn off by ability, but in a way that you still can't tell what's what, because it's all server controlled. You're telling the server, don't show me this. And the server's going to stop sending you that timer. But the other timers you see, you're still not going to know what is what. Blizzard is not going to allow add-ons to support timer emphasis such as audio countdowns, period. And the stance that Ian said about this was basically he feels that you should always be watching for what's coming, and that if something is audible, you start automating it in a way to where you're not looking for it in your UI. You're just listening for it only, and they don't really like that. They want you to be visually interacting with the raid environment, watching the boss energy, watching the boss timers, and using that to determine that the ability is upcoming. They don't want you on autopilot, waiting to hear 1, 2, 3, or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to react to something. Oh, another pain point was no counts. So Blizzard's going to be adding a count option for all abilities. It'll be like a checkbox that says show cast count. So you can see, big AoE spell 1, big AoE spell 2. And by extension, because the base UI is going to get it, so too will add-ons, because they parse the text exactly the same way. Whatever text Blizzard has, add-ons have. Blizzard will consider adding RP timers to timeline to compensate for lost APIs that allow add-ons to do it themselves. Because we can't parse the combat log anymore, because we can't parse chat logs anymore, we can't tell when an NPC yells, "I am God King Scovald," and start a timer for it. And when we brought that up to Blizzard, we suggested, you do the timer. You do the timer, put it in the stock UI, and add-ons will have access to it too, because add-ons have access to timer API. Whatever's in the timeline, we can see. So they're going to consider doing RP timers, but it's probably going to be on a case-by-case basis. So it's like, they might add an RP timer here, but not add one here right away, things like that. It's one of those things where it's more of a consideration, not a guarantee. It's just something that they're aware of now. Raid warnings. Blizzard said they did not want raid warnings to be directive. The screenshots, the previews they posted previously where it said whirlwind, move away, they don't want that, even on the stock UI. It's only going to say whirlwind. There's going to be no direction in the text at all in a future build. They are against that, and that was a mistake that was included in the first place. They don't want any directive instruction coming from the base UI or add-ons. Which is to say also that when add-ons display warnings, the only thing we're going to be displaying is the text Blizzard tells us to display. Blizzard will be adding an API that lets add-on register sounds to cast alerts. Yes, any sound to any spell. We're going to be able to say, for spell ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, play a cat meow, or play a voice pack like DBM has, or whatever you want. We're going to be able to register sounds by ability for any ability with one caveat. Only cast. Because the next point, Blizzard will not be allowing add-ons to register sounds for debuffs or target alerts. So in other words, you can have a sound the bomb is casting. You cannot register a sound that says you are the bomb. That's a key distinction that Blizzard wanted to emphasize, that they don't want add-ons. Again, they're steering from things being directive. It's okay to have audible alerts that say a spell is being cast, especially when they recognize accessibility concerns. But they still want you to be consciously aware that you're targeted from playing the game, not the add-on playing it for you. And they said they're going to be extra vigilant about ensuring that you can see that you're the target without relying on these custom alerts or sounds going to you for it. They're going to make sure there's going to be excessive screen glow, very clear circles, very clear choreographing. That's their promise anyway. We will see if they deliver. I mean, they've said this before, and we still get red on red on red. I'll believe it when I say it, or see it. I'm a critic too. Cooldown Manager. Blizzard will be making sure that add-ons can add their own sound options to the Cooldown Manager. They recognize that built-in sounds don't serve everyone, including those who suffer from misophonia, which is aversion to certain sounds. It's an accessibility concern that they recognize. If add-ons can register their own media to the Cooldown Manager, it means that you can have a suite of sounds, maybe a sound pack similar to what WeakAuras had built in, for when your cooldowns come up with Blizzard's own Cooldown Manager with the power of custom media. That's another big win. Miscellaneous. Blizzard will be adding an API to report boss health percentages and bosses remaining on a wipe. This is to address the new restrictions in Unit Died, and what I talked about in my last video where I said harmless usage, like a council boss or Dimensius, or has multiple phases, and just reporting the health alone was insufficient to quantifying the status of the wipe. So if the API is actually returning the boss percentage, the phase, the number of bosses defeated, now add-ons can quantify much better and the statistics can be complete while still restricting access to information like unit died or phase changes mid-fight. They don't want you to have access to this information mid-fight at all, but they're okay with doing a dump of information when the fight ends for statistical purposes, like what DBM and Bigwigs do when they report a wipe. Blizzard has emphasized, again, they do not want to support nameplate timers, period, such as the timers from WeakAuras or Bigwigs and DBM add over the nameplates in Mythic Plus that show the interrupt cooldown or the cooldown in the big AoE and stuff like that. They fully intend to make Mythic Plus approachable without this feature by ensuring that there'll be less casters per pull, longer cast bars, etc., to mitigate the fact that you can't easily and readily see in 2 seconds, I need to switch to this target to kick this 1 second cast or we die. Well, now maybe it'll be a 3 second cast and maybe you won't die if you miss it. They want to approach it from a gameplay standpoint, not an add-on one. They don't want this in the stock UI. They don't want it from add-ons. Blizzard has stated that they are against renaming spells in instructional ways, such as renaming a spell to Soaks or Frontal. They do not want to give add-ons access to rename spells. This is something that both me and the Bigwigs author tried to ask for when we were talking about the raid timeline and warnings. We said players liked it when we renamed the spells, but Blizzard doesn't. They do not like that. They hate it, in fact. They want game knowledge to be a part of gameplay. That knowing what a spell is without being told what it is part of gameplay in Blizzard's eyes. They want you to pull a boss and learn Super Phantasmo Osmo is a frontal. And they want you to know that with your game knowledge without having DBM saying, it's a frontal. Blizzard will be considering an API for querying whether you're close to a unit, but it will be a fixed distance, such as 100 yards. And that's for fights like last year, Undermine, where you had the Raptor and the Gorilla, and you're on this side of the room, not on that side of the room, so you're only concerned with what's going on over here. What's going over here isn't your problem. And this about sums up what we got from the interview today with Ian and Andy. But it's a lot of good stuff, and it shows a lot of back and forth from feedback and acknowledging sore points while also drilling down areas where they won't be bending and sharing their philosophies with us and why they won't be bending on it. And it shows a lot of progress, though. A lot of good stuff is coming, and it's all still subject to change because this is still alpha, soon to be beta next week. This is the last week of alpha, and there's probably going to be a lot more feedback for both the boss encounter design as well as just basic unit frames and game functionality. But I'd say that this build and the future in general has a lot of big wins here, which is why I tell people, don't be doomers yet. Try to give as much feedback as possible. And the biggest advice I can say is don't give the feedback saying, don't break my add-on. Instead, say, this is what I was using the add-on for and why I needed that feature. Please consider making that feature part of the base UI. Like one core philosophy that was emphasized in this meeting is Ian is okay with add-ons doing pretty much anything the base UI can do. What he does not want to see is add-ons that exceed the potential of the base UI or start solving things for you in computational ways. And to him, computation was not just weak or in the middle of a fight. It's also removing thinking from the process, like renaming a spell in their vision of World of Warcraft is solving things for you because it's making you not required to be knowledgeable about that spell. And that's something that being clarified to us today helps a lot to really understand their goals going forward. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more updates on this channel, and I will see you in the next one.